Here's 5 things that I think would dramatically improve New World. It's going to be things that I think they could do relatively quickly. And the first thing is the obvious one. They need to sort out the expedition keys. As of right now, they're pretty expensive, and whilst actually they might be worth that expense because you get your improved high watermark gear score, you also actually get quite a bit of raw gold. It's actually just a cost that is putting off players participating in the expeditions. And there's a few ways to make these fit for purpose. You could give people a free key every X period of time. You could make them available in the faction reward vendor so that you have to do like your faction PvP or your faction quest. You could drastically reduce the time it takes to gather the stuff to make the keys. There's quite a few options available. I just think anything that makes it less of a stress for players and something that enables casual players to think, oh, I'll actually go do an expedition without having to worry about losing your key, the stress of maybe not being good, etc. Now I appreciate the downside to that is that high watermark gear score and that gold would probably all have to be toned down a little bit because Amazon obviously don't want you to blast through the watermark gear scoring system, but we'll talk about that later. And the second one I know a lot of people have mentioned, and this may be on the way, and that is to reuse the old expeditions and do that in a way so that it's relevant to level 60s, obviously. As of right now, if you're level 60, there's no real reason to use 4 of the expeditions: Amrine, Starstone, Depths and Dynasty. And there's 2 ways I'd like to see them approach this. Of course, I'd like to just see level 60 versions of those 4 expeditions, but I'd also like to see maybe a way of scaling them so you get level 60 rewards for entering as level 60, but the difficulty is adjusted like that. Now, I don't know how that would be possible, but basically I want to see a system here where a higher level player could play with a lower level player and then both sort of get something from that. I'm not sure how to implement that, I'm not a game designer, but that would be nice as well. Obviously, you may want hard modes, but there's no real point having hard mode on Lazarus and Genesis right now when most people aren't doing them because the cost is just too off-putting. And then we have Outpost Rush. Again, a couple of things I'd like to see. I'd like to see that the chest that you get as a reward from Outpost Rush be maybe a little bit better. Maybe guaranteeing an increase in water score or something like that. And the way I would personally do this would be to give a little bit of a boost to the first one that you do each day, meaning that you're rewarding people at least doing it once per day or something like that, which means they have varied content experiences. Because right now doing Outpost Rush a lot, it's not really that good to improve your gear as opposed to doing the like elite chest runs, but obviously Amazon don't like those. And the second point on Outpost Rush, well, it pains me to say it, but I think we may be getting to the point where we're going to need cross-server Outpost Rush queues. And as I said, it does pain me to say that, but I think when we look at the server sizes of being about 2,000, it doesn't seem like that's going to be enough to sustain enough Outpost Rush games for most players. So unless they're going to increase the server capacity, which they may be able to do, then I think actually a cross-realm queue here is probably the most likely and most feasible solution to the Outpost Rush queue dilemma. And right now, because we don't actually have the server merges, there are some servers and some people who literally can't play Outpost Rush, and well, this would sort that for them. And to be fair, even on the bigger servers, because people are leaving slowly, the queue times are going up. And the next thing we're going to talk about is a transmog system. So right now the aesthetics of New World are a little bit awkward because essentially you can really only buy skins. There is no way of collecting them in game because you can't take a look from a different item and apply new stats to that. However, you can take your item that's got good stats and apply a store-bought skin. That's possible, but there's nothing you can do in-game without spending money to actually affect the look of your armor. Essentially, if you have a gear piece that's got really good stats, etc., then the only way you can change the look of it is to buy a skin in the store. And really, because it's only the fact that you can buy the skin, it sort of takes away the point as the aesthetic. It needs to be available in-game. Now, Amazon did make a big thing talking about the quality of the skins in-game was as good as the ones that you could buy on the store, and that may or may not be the case. It actually does seem to relatively be the case. The problem is that you can't really do anything with it, because if you don't like your look of the gear that you've got at a high level, well, there's nothing you can do with it apart from to put it onto a skin that you've bought from the store. You can't make it blend in with the rest of your gear. It's just an awkward system, and it would be nice if they changed this. Now, there's a couple ways of doing this. They would maybe have a system where you could just like essentially distill the look of an item, where maybe you salvage it in a way where you keep the skin. That would be pretty cool. And or have a system where crafters can maybe select the type of skin that they want to use when they create that item. Obviously they wouldn't be able to use the store-bought ones, but maybe they could use the distilled ones that I just mentioned. Without it, the aesthetics of the game just feel a little bit meh. And the next thing I want to talk about is gear management, but also I'd quite like them to remove luck gear. So for gear, if you're trying to manage your gear in your bags and stuff like that, it's really awkward right now. There's a few little sort items, as you can sort by time, gear score, weight, etc. But you know what you can't do? You literally can't manually sort your own gear. At least I haven't found a way of doing that. So that makes it really difficult to say, okay, this is my mining set, or this is a set that I want to use if I'm going to spec into decks. Something like that. You literally can't really do that. And there's a couple of ways of improving this. One little thing that they may be able to do is to just implement like a folder into the UI where you could literally like put your gear into that and just have it as a folder, and you can keep track of stuff like that. If they're not willing to do that because it would be a little bit ugly, then what they could also do is a proper gear management system where you could actually save a gear set. Right now, it's pretty annoying and just overall frustrating. And it's made worse by the luck gear sets. You know, you want to have a set for mining, you want to have a set for skinning, and so on and so forth. Whilst in most games, you just want to have gear sets for different builds, in this game, you want to have a gear set for different builds, as well as different luck gathering sets. It's frustrating, it's awkward, I don't like it. What I would personally do here is just combine the luck into one stat, so even luck for gathering was the same as the luck for getting gear score or increases and stuff like that. That would make it a little bit better and, you know, wouldn't annoy everybody because you could literally just convert the stats at least. And then in the long term, I'd actually just look at getting it removed. I just don't think this is a good system, but maybe you do, maybe you like it, but for me, it's just awkward. And speaking about an awkward system that I don't really like, well, I think they should remove the high watermark gear score system. It's just not fun, and quite frankly, I think it's a bit crap. Now, I appreciate that this would also be a big change and not something they can just implement straight away. But the only positive thing I ever really see people talk about here with the high watermark gear score system is that it functions, that it works. Yes, it works, but no, it's not very fun. It does work in slowing down your progression, for sure. But this is generally different to how a lot of MMO and games and stuff like that have done this in the past. Obviously, in games like World of Warcraft, you know, you would farm like a raid and you'd be waiting to get that like one piece that you needed to improve your gear. And whilst that system is a little bit awkward if you don't get that piece, it was sort of improved upon with the idea of tokens. As in, if you don't get the piece you need, eventually you're getting the tokens you need that you can buy something sort of similar. I personally never enjoyed just farming like one piece of content on repeat, and I appreciate that if you remove the high watermark gear score system, you might end up with a system where people are actually just farming the same expeditions over and over and over, and that maybe also wouldn't be fun. And actually in New World there are still some like named items that you can try and farm, so that is available. But for me, the gear score system is just like blatantly too much in front of you. You can just see the system and you know you're not having fun with it, and that makes it even more frustrating. I also think this is the reason that Amazon are having difficulty balancing the different content types and the content variety. Like, I think it's the reason that expeditions are gated, and it's the reason they've been having the struggles with the outdoor elite areas. But we'll talk about this a different time, I think. Also, I would like to see that if you just hit an NPC or you're on the damage or the healing table, then you just get the gear. Having a system where like only 5 out of 40 people get the gear, it's awkward, and the fact that you've got these elite chests sort of make it so it's actually more valuable to run in big groups. Like, yeah, just make it so that everybody gets the gear, and then you can start turning down the chests. I just find that annoying. Let me know what you think Amazon can do to improve the game right now. That isn't obviously just like new content or a massive change, nor is it just fixing all the bugs, because, you know, we have to be realistic here. Like, subscribe, goodbye.